So not too long ago, D23 happened, and quite a few things got announced, but the only thing I really seemed to care about is the recent trailer shown for Daredevil Born Again. There were a lot of things shown and details that were shared for what the show could possibly be about. Now, Daredevil and Punisher were my favorite TV shows back when it was on Netflix, but with how much time has passed, many people are wondering what the story could be about with the information we now have. In order to do that, I want to go through the timeline of Daredevil's development, and in turn, theorize what the story could be for Daredevil Born Again. So far, we've had only 3 live-action iterations of Daredevil. In 1989, Rex Smith portrayed the Man Without Fear costume in the Trial of the Incredible Hulk movie. He actually did a very good job in the movie, which makes the next iteration of Daredevil very surprising. In 2003, Ben Affleck portrayed Matt Murdock in the Daredevil movie, which was just an awful movie, and Ben Affleck was terrible for this role. With how bad the movie was, Marvel wanted to correct this by making a new Daredevil TV show on Netflix starring Charlie Cox, which ran for about 3 seasons. Season 1 primarily took place shortly after the Avengers Battle of New York, where Thanos' army rained down and wreaked havoc, destroying much of New York. This is important because this was a huge factor of why Kingpin had such a hold on New York. His company was in charge of rebuilding New York after the battle, and because of that, had such power, money, and influence on New York that Wilson Fisk became the biggest corrupt corporation owner in New York, to the point of putting a sizable chunk of New York in his pocket, and even branching out to other countries to help build his underground empire. The show goes through with Matt uncovering Wilson Fisk's activity, and ends with him getting his costume and getting Fisk arrested. Also, somewhere in the middle of the season, Foggy finds out about Matt's alter ego. Season 2 focused more on Matt taking on the Punisher in the first half, while the second half dealt with Matt teaming up with Elektra and taking down the Hand. And it ended with Punisher and Daredevil on good terms, Elektra's death, and Punisher leaving, setting up for his own solo series, with Matt revealing that he is Daredevil to Karen. In between Season 2 and 3, there was the Defenders TV show that had Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist teaming up with Daredevil to take on the Hand once more after they revived Elektra. The show ends with Elektra and Matt being crushed beneath the Hand's HQ, with Matt surviving and the fate of Elektra remaining ambiguous. Season 3 of Daredevil picks up where Defenders left off, with Daredevil is shown to be alive and everyone thinks that he is dead, but he was taken in by the church's nuns who nurse him back to health. Kingpin also returns and hires Ben Poindexter, also known as Bullseye, to take on Matt and frame him as a bad guy. Matt also struggles with his faith and finds out his mom is a nun, and shows her background with Matt's dad. Season 3 had the most story packed into it out of all the seasons, but it ends with Matt returning to his faith, beating Kingpin, and Bullseye realizing Fisk was manipulating him, but Fisk breaks Dex's spine, forcing people to repair it. Through the 3 seasons, Matt, Foggy, and Karen have had a rocky relationship due to Matt's nighttime activities, but by the end of Season 3, our trio patched up everything and teased a new law firm called Nelson, Murdoch, and Page. With that, Daredevil would be unfortunately cancelled due to Feige wanting to include Daredevil into the rest of the overall MCU, as well as the rest of the Defenders. The only other show that will be really important to Daredevil's overall story, according to what we have so far, is Punisher and its 2 seasons. Punisher's first season would focus on Frank taking revenge on the people who killed his family, including his former comrade, Billy Russo. Billy would be the main antagonist for both seasons and would later be coined as the Jigsaw after Punisher also lovingly put Billy Russo's face through a mirror. He would also be against Agent Orange in the first season, the main person who was responsible for the death of Frank's family. But in Season 2, John Pilgrim would be the secondary antagonist, along with Elisa Schultz. In the second season, a character named Amy Bendix would be protected the whole season by Frank, and Billy Russo's return to raise an army against Frank, but Frank ultimately wins and kills both Russo and John, and eventually Madani kills Schultz, ending with Amy leaving for New Horizons. With that, the story of Daredevil and Punisher were left in purgatory, as both shows were swiftly cancelled, leading to them not being able to be used for future projects until their contract with Netflix ended. So, after 2018, Daredevil and Punisher could not start being used until 2020, but we wouldn't see any of these characters reprise their roles until the release of Hawkeye and Spider-Man No Way Home in 2021. So, let's run down both the story timeline and production timeline of the Daredevil characters. So, keep in mind, after 2 years of hiatus, a lot has happened, including the snap and the blip. And at some point in the production for these shows, the Defenders verse is non-canon. Anyways, in Hawkeye, Kingpin would show up and show that he has his empire like he did in the Netflix shows. However, it seems like he has more groups that he has control over, one of them being rather underwhelming characters in the form of Maya Lopez, aka Echo. She's a good enough one-shot character or even just a supporting character, but she would eventually get her own show as well. Anyways, during the snap times, Kingpin would hire Hawkeye, because at the time he was going by Ronin, to kill Mia's father, but she believed that it was Clint's free will. When she finds out that Fisk was responsible, she would end up shooting Kingpin in the face. However, much like in the comics, this wouldn't kill him, but temporarily blind him until he would get facial reconstructive surgery to correct it. That's the end of his story in the Hawkeye TV show, but in Echo it would follow up Fisk's story. Not much of note actually happens in the show, which I guess means two things. Cause Echo was a boring show to be honest, but the interesting stuff comes from Fisk, who actually loves Maya, and wants to recruit her, but fails in doing so. The show ends weirdly when Maya forces Fisk to face his past, instead of killing him. On his way back to New York, he sees a news channel that talks about the mayoral elections for New York, teasing his role in Daredevil Born Again. That's all for Kingpin. But as for Daredevil, we first see his MCU debut in Spider-Man No Way Home, representing Peter after Mysterio outed his name to the public. This was rather a quick cameo, but just ambiguous enough to keep options open for whether or not the old Defender shows were canon or not. Daredevil's only other appearance since then is unfortunately She-Hulk and Echo. Now, Daredevil did show up in She-Hulk, which isn't surprising at all, as they are both lawyers. It's just unfortunate because the show itself just wasn't very good, but luckily the only good parts of the show was the ones that had Daredevil in it. And luckily the show didn't ruin Daredevil as a character. The only things that are noteworthy for Daredevil's overall story is that he's now getting his suits made by somebody else. And that does make sense, as Potter was taken in shortly after Season 3, though I do wish to see him return for Daredevil Born Again. As for Daredevil's appearance in Echo, it was a rather quick cameo, and could hint at what Matt was doing during the snap times. But beyond that, he wasn't in the rest of the show, and again, luckily the parts that he was in didn't ruin Daredevil as a character. So that's everything we needed to know from the older shows, and now that we are caught up, here's what we know about Daredevil Born Again. Then I can start actually giving my thoughts on what might happen in the show. When the show was first announced, it was confirmed that it was originally meant to be a sort of soft reboot of the original Netflix shows. Now, when it was originally announced, it was greenlit for 18 episodes, and the only characters confirmed for the show were Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock and Vincent D'Onofrio for Wilson Fisk. However, in the middle of them filming, the writer's strike happened, putting the production to a halt. This gave Kevin Feige the opportunity to look over what they had, and needless to say, he didn't like it. From what we heard, Karen Page wasn't even going to show up, and Foggy was going to be either killed off on-screen or off-screen. Bullseye wasn't going to show up either, and neither was Punisher. We also knew that the show writers were going to be from the CW, and we all know how they work out. This was confirmed to be a bad choice, as the original writers wanted to bring in a lighter tone to the Daredevil, and make it more episodic instead of the dark linear tone that we had from the Netflix shows. It was also confirmed that Matt wouldn't even suit up until about episode 4, but when they decided to rework everything, they realized their mistake and finally chose to canonize all of the Defenders shows, which was pretty easy as everything that was leading up to that point never really went against what was previously established, so it was an easy transition and an easy decision to bring back Deborah Ann Woll as Karen Page and Eldon Henson as Foggy Nelson. They also decided to bring back John Bernthal as Frank Castle's Punisher and Wilson Bethel as Benjamin Poindexter's Bullseye. They decided the show would essentially be Daredevil Season 4. They would end up firing the old show writers and would bring in Dario Scardapane, who helped write for Punisher, and he also wrote for Moon Knight and Loki Season 2. They would also bring back the fight choreographers from the Netflix show. This show would also only bring back major payoffs from the prior shows, though not everything will have a payoff since it has been a while, and that is what I'm here to do, to figure out what they might be planning, or even what I personally would like to see from the show. So let's get started. First things first is the confirmation on certain things and characters we've been seeing, such as the return of major fan favorite characters like Karen, Foggy, Bullseye, and Punisher. Set photos would show that Bullseye and Punisher are involved in some way, but to what extent was unclear, at least at the time the set photos were released. However, news would come out confirming the inclusion of new characters like Muse, who is a newer villain from the comics, and a new love interest for Matt from the comics, known as Heather Glenn. Rumors have also spread that Kristen Ritter's Jessica Jones would probably appear, but nothing has been officially confirmed, including any set photos. Fisk's wife Vanessa was also originally recast, but after the rewrite, they would bring back the original actress, and it's confirmed that she'll at least be mildly involved. As for the story, they decided to split the 18 episodes into 2 separate seasons. Season 1 is confirmed to have its major villain be Muse, a vigilante who is very anti-Fisk, and will kill people and use their blood as paint to paint graffiti as they spread their anti-vigilante and anti-Fisk sentiment. Along with that, we also see police officers wearing the Punisher logo on their vests, which reflects the comics where Punisher is angry that the cops are doing this and don't want them to be like him and wants them to be better than him. We also know Fisk eventually won the election and has become the new mayor of New York. Now, that's just what we got from the set photos and what little info we got from Marvel themselves, but recently we got even more info based solely off the trailer shown off at D23. From the trailer, we also see that they're including another vigilante known as White Tiger, who seems to have been locked up after Fisk decided to crack down on vigilantes. We see White Tiger, aka Hector Ayala, talking to Matt while in prison, saying that New York needs a hero. We also see a flashback of Hector who killed a man by pushing him in front of a moving train, which may be hinting that this is the reason he was thrown in jail and why they're against vigilantes, which means that this anti-vigilante sentiment was kicked off by Hector Ayala and not Frank Castle like what other people have been suggesting based on the set photos. This may even be propelled further as we see Matt confronting a grizzled-looking Frank Castle, showing that it may be Matt looking for him because of cops wearing his logo. Also, if you remember, Frank doesn't know that Matt is also Daredevil, as Matt never really revealed this to him, which I'm glad they're addressing since Frank looks confused when Matt knew that he was holding a hatchet, given that he's blind. Matt also seems to be using his extendable billy club a lot more in the show, and he's using it in fights, and it seems like they're finally using it to swing down from rooftops like he did in the comics, which could look goofy if done wrong, but in the comics it looks badass. But it could look goofy in the live action unless they do it right. Daredevil's costume seems to have gotten a bit of an overhaul, as his suit seems to be more closely resembling the color aesthetic from the comics. My only wish is that they finally give him the DD logo on his costume by season's end. Now, by the end of the trailer, it also shows Matt talking to Kingpin from across the table at a diner, proving he's already mayor, so he will have to do more to take Fisk out. Many people also believe that they will have to work together to take out Muse, but I doubt either are so eager to work with one another. And given what Matt said, telling Kingpin if he steps out of line, he'll be there. So I doubt we'll see a temporary team up with them. It's more like they're going to try and stay out of each other's way. So what could the show look like? Well, there is one thing I want to see them talk about, since we did miss one major event that happened between 2019 and 2024, and that was the Snap Times. I know they call it the blip, but given that that's a stupid-ass name for it,
I've elected to ignore it.
Anyways, I think the first episode of Season 2 should talk about what happened between the end of Season 3 of Daredevil and the end of Season 2 of Punisher, up to the point where they are now with Born Again. Mainly, show a bit of what happened in the 5 years after the decimation during the Snap Times. There is one theory that many people have pointed out, and that is that Karen and Foggy got dusted, and that the reason Fisk is out of prison was because during the decimation, many criminals were released because we had so little people to help, they needed them in exchange for a release. This could also be why Benjamin Poindexter is also out of prison, though he could have just escaped. It's hard to tell, but it could make sense that Fisk would take advantage of the chaos of the snap and rebuild his empire while posing as just wanting to help rebuild New York. This would also make sense why no one seems to care about Fisk's past actions, since worse things have happened in the 5 years since Fisk was arrested, which is why he is even eligible to run for mayor to begin with, let alone win the damn thing. It also seems as though Punisher survived the decimation, and maybe he's going through the motions of it here, since it's probably implied that Amy Bendix probably also got snapped, but we'll see. Eventually though, people will come back, and we see that Karen and Foggy are back and hanging out with Matt, and are probably trying to find a way to stop Muse and Kingpin, or maybe just Kingpin, with Muse coming in later. It's currently unclear when Muse will come in, but it does seem like their first major threat will be Bullseye, who may still want his revenge on Karen and Matt. As we see here, he probably is shooting at Karen, but misses due to Matt stopping him, or because Foggy saved her, and probably got tagged instead. Though I doubt he'll die here, even if it is Foggy that got hit. Now, at the end of Season 3, Poindexter was shown getting surgery done on his spine, and with Captain America 4 supposedly introducing adamantium into the MCU to help bring in the X-Men, it could also help Poindexter be more comic book accurate in giving him an adamantium spine, since Born Again is supposed to be happening after Captain America 4. Of course, because of the cops adopting the Punisher logo, Matt probably figured out they're in Fisk's pocket again and is searching for Frank to help him out. And that's where these set photos come into play. We also know Matt has 5 different costumes, which makes me wonder which ones we'll see him don this season. We see his Netflix costume, his bright red costume from this show, which is his more comic book accurate costume, his mustard and ketchup costume from the She-Hulk show, which is the grossest looking one out of the 5, a white costume, probably referring to his purified form after becoming a priest, also known as Hand of God Daredevil, and an all-black costume to refer to his Shadowland Diggs costume from the comics. Also, according to Charlie Cox, we are getting some small references to the larger MCU, but nothing major. Like, for example, Yusef Khan is coming in from Ms. Marvel, but I hope we only get a few references so we can stay as close to home as possible, but small references here and there are fine. Vincent D'Onofrio also states it will be more grounded, meaning street level, and meaning they can focus on more of the drama like the original show, and it will have a very similar tone of the original show, and it will have moments that are even darker. Now, the only other thing that they could be setting up is a rematch between Fisk and Castle. In Daredevil Season 2, when Frank was arrested, Fisk wanted him there so he could kill whoever was in charge of the prison so he could take over, and release him so that way Castle could kill all of his competition for when he gets released later. Castle only took the deal because he wanted revenge on the people who killed his family. However, Castle vows that if he ever runs into Fisk again, he promised to kill him. So it may not happen here or even in Season 2, but we could see Frank wanting to take out Kingpin for good. But I would like them to at least try and set up a solo Punisher show once again. And of course, with them finally being able to mention other heroes, Frank in the comics has always idolized Captain America, as he sees Cap as the person he wishes to be, but ultimately can't because of the legal system being against us. Which they could reference, since Frank has always said cops should not use his symbol, because he wishes them to be better than him, and that they should idolize people like Captain America a lot more. One thing I'm not sure about is how Season 1 will even end. Obviously they gotta take out Muse and Bullseye, but I wonder if they'll wait for Kingpin to be taken down until Season 2, or even until Spider-Man 4, but only time will tell. But with that, those are all of my thoughts on what I'd like to see in Daredevil Born Again, and what I think we could see. Let me know what you'd like to see in the comments below, and if there's anything you think could happen based on the trailers and set photos, or even rumors. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and if you really like this video and you want to see more like it, why not consider subscribing for more if you guys enjoyed, and hit that notification bell for more videos like this. Also check out all my socials in the description, as well as checking out my Patreon if you guys want to support me further. And until next time guys, stay hype, stay awesome, stay weird, and be nice to each other. I'm Cybertech Werewolf, and I'll see you guys next time.